Welcome to Victim's View, a show produced by the Solicitor General's Office. I'm Carmen Smith, the Solicitor General. The Solicitor General's Office prosecutes misdemeanor cases in state court. We are fortunate to have several colleges in Fulton County that provide a quality education to hundreds of students. Unfortunately, some of those students have been or will be victims of crime. Today we're talking with investigator Cheryl Lowman with the Georgia State University Police Department. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about Georgia State?
Yes, Georgia State is one of the largest campus police department in Georgia. We provide services to the immediate college campus community as well as the outlying community surrounding Georgia State University.
Now, some of us who work downtown, we know how big Georgia State is. But for those folks who are not familiar with the campus itself, could you give us some parameters, some street distances, some jurisdictions in which your police department covers?
Yes, our basic jurisdiction is 500 yards from any Board of Regents facility. But that Board of Regents facility can outline and go further beyond the parameters of Georgia State. Georgia Tech, as you know, is located on North Avenue. So our parameters and jurisdiction would also go towards Georgia Tech or any facility with the name of Georgia State University. We also have facilities in Alpharetta and also Peachtree Street, which is located near the Buckhead area. So our jurisdiction would span out to those locations as well, and all the surrounding areas 500 yards from those locations as well.
That is fascinating. I didn't realize that you covered so many areas. And as far as that's concerned, let's be clear, you don't work for the Atlanta Police or the Alpharetta Police, correct? You're your own separate department?
Yes, we are our own individual police department. We are state certified, sworn certified officers for the state of Georgia, but our jurisdiction allows us to go certain places within the parameters of the Board of Regents. So wherever there is a Board of Regents facility with the name of Georgia State University, that clarifies our jurisdiction as well.
And as far as the coverage, when you were talking about the students being on campus, Georgia State is a little different as a campus, correct?
Yes.
In that it does not have a confined institution, as you will, that you go through a gate and there's hollowed halls. It really has spread throughout, I would say, the downtown area.
Yes, it has. Georgia State University is very unique. It's located right here downtown Atlanta. It's an open campus and it's also an urban campus where we have different varieties and different nationalities of students from all over the world that attend Georgia State University. Because of its open atmosphere, our police officers are well versed in the different areas where we patrol.
Speaking of patrol, you patrol inside the buildings as well as outside of the buildings?
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, normally we are confined to the campus for safety purposes, and we focus on our buildings and facilities. But when we are called for service outside of the buildings, we respond to those calls as well. We also have a amount of housing facilities that are spread throughout the campus, so we respond to those calls as well for service.
Are any of your officers located within those buildings?
We have approximately 35 full-time security officers who are spread throughout the campus that have posts within some of those buildings. 35 full-time security. We also have approximately 15 part-time security officers as well.
So when there is a issue about jurisdiction, however, do you work with the other police departments as well?
Oh, certainly. We collaborate, and we also share information as far as crimes are concerned with the city of Atlanta. We also share with Mahler Police Department, which is located a few feet away from Georgia State's main building. We also have the Georgia Building Authority, police, and we also respond to calls quickly because we're right there in the area. So whereas when they call the city of Atlanta, we are right there. So we may respond as well as Atlanta will respond. But if it's Atlanta's call, city street, they will take the call.
What kind of, I guess, crimes are more common on the campuses?
The major crimes and I'm saying major, but the majority of the crimes at Georgia State is thefts. Thefts,
in the dorm rooms?
In the dorms, in the classrooms, in the facilities. Theft is our major crime. So we also deal with all types of crimes. We deal with robberies. We deal with assaults. We deal with fighting, because we have a park that's located right across the street from Georgia State, Woodruff Park. I'm sure you're aware of that park. We have different fights and different things going on in the park. So we have a lot of assaults going on. But our major a crime is mostly theft. It's mostly theft calls.
Well, considering you're in an urban environment and we have a lot of homeless people, I would also wonder if you have any situations with criminal trespass and those types of crimes, or just harassing the students, or just being in places that you'd rather they not be. Do you have much of a protocol for what you do with those situations?
Well, we deal with the homeless, and we do have calls for criminal trespass in some instances, but for the most part, we usually escort them back out of the buildings. We do issue criminal trespass warnings. Fortunately, we do have officers to deal with the homeless, so that they're not always going down to the jail facility when they do need a lot of them need mental assistance. So we do have crisis intervention training officers to deal with those situations where the homeless are coming inside of the building. So we're just more likely to escort them out, get them the help that they need.
What about I guess the female population more so than the rest of the population? When it comes to things like, I guess, stalking and sexual harassment, or anything having to do with the ladies that basically they're in an urban area trying to go to class. Mm-hmm. Do you get many calls regarding those kinds of situations?
We do get some calls for stalking. We do have some situations where they have a lot of interference while they're walking in the urban campus, but we have call boxes located all throughout our campus where they can just push a button and get police assistance right away for those situations. The stalking situations, we normally have incidents where they file a police report and we assist them with the stalking situation. We assist them with temporary protective orders if necessary, and we walk them through the process of obtaining temporary protective orders.
And as far as the theft cases, I was also thinking about the many cases we've been hearing about lately about iPods and cell phones when the students are walking around with those visible. I noticed that there seems to be an increase in Georgia Tech as well, in Georgia State, for that very reason. I just don't know what else you can do as a police force to prevent that kind of a theft in the area, since it is an open campus.
Mm-hmm. Well, we normally have seminars and training programs to show the students how they can be safe in their environment while they're on the phone. We show them that they need to use the buddy system when walking down the streets late at night. And we also make them aware of their surroundings when walking down the street with their cell phones. Unfortunately, it's the age group that we're dealing with that they're not so much concerned about these things as normal, as the older people do. They do take less precautions when walking down the street, but we try to ensure them that while walking down the street, they need to use the buddy system and they need to use more security concerns when walking down the street with, when they're by themselves.
Well, speaking of which, there's a lot of traffic that's in and out of the facilities, correct? So I would wonder that would also be an issue of whether or not, they're behaving, that they follow all the traffic signals and that sort of thing as well.
Yes, we also have a pedestrian safety team.
And what's that about?
Pedestrian safety team is part of our traffic unit, and the pedestrian safety team is there to make sure that students are crossing the streets and traffic is not, drivers are not violating the traffic safety laws on campus. We also have another unit within Georgia State, which is called the Panther Ambassadors, and they are there to make sure students get across the street safely. And they work in conjunction with the police department to make sure that the laws are being followed by drivers as they pass through our campus during peak hours.
Well, I notice you also have a lot of buses.
Oh, yes.
So I would imagine with the bus routes as well, they're very extensive considering the many different campuses facilities that you have on campus.
Well, our bus route, our Panther bus, it makes sure, it ensures that students are getting back and forth to campus because there are some areas where there is no parking. And parking may be all the way down at Turner Field. So they ensure that our students get a safe ride back and forth to their vehicles so that they can get to class as well.
And those buses are only for Georgia State students, correct?
Yes, only for Georgia State students.
So if somebody else tried to get on the bus, then we'd have an issue.
Well, yeah. A lot of times people do try to, but without their Panther card, they're not allowed to ride on those buses.
And you said something about parking. Do many students drive?
A lot of students commute to Georgia State, and we allow for a parking at the Turner Field parking. We have multiple parking garages on campus, but because our student community is so large, we sometimes don't have enough parking. So we commute them back and forth to
That
Turner
seems to be
Field.
the way it is everywhere.
Yes.
There's never enough parking. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but stay tuned because when we come back, we're going to learn more about the Georgia State Police Department. Welcome back to Victim's View. I'm talking to Cheryl Lowman, an investigator with the Georgia State Police Department. Investigator Lowman, can you kind of walk me through what would be a typical, say, assault case? What would be the typical way that would be handled? Would you receive a call from that student, typically?
Typically, when there's any incident or any crime that's committed at Georgia State University, they have to call our communications line, which is the Georgia State Emergency Line. Once that emergency call is made, there is an officer that would be dispatched immediately to that location of the incident of the crime. Once that is completed, the officer arrives. They're like the first responders on the scene, and they ascertain all the information pertaining to the crime, and they convey that via radio through dispatch so that we're actively either looking for the assailant and also gathering the information from the victim. Once that is done, if the victim needs immediate attention, medical attention, immediate medical attention will be sent for her with the ambulance, and we'll get that victim to Grady Hospital for immediate medical attention.
For example, if this person was in a dorm room and got assaulted in her dorm room, I would also imagine there would be some, let's say, security within that building who would also be accessible to that person, correct?
Well, a lot of the dorms, they do not have security in the dorms. They would still have to call our emergency number, and an officer will be dispatched to that location. If it is an assault of a sexual nature, they would in turn contact an investigator, myself or another investigator on call, and we will respond to that location as well. Depending on the type of assault, we would have additional officers respond to that location so that they can secure the scene. And then immediately that victim is taken for emergency medical treatment if needed. That's our first priority.
So when you come out as an investigator, you take the initial report as first responder?
The initial report is taken by the first responder, which is the police officer, the uniformed police officer. I come in as follow-up. I come in not only as an investigator, but also as a victim service coordinator to make sure that the victim receives the necessary attention that she needs in order for her to move forward in the investigation. In order to make sure that she's safe and secure, we transport her to the hospital to receive that medical treatment, and then once that's done, then the investigation begins.
And you conducted that investigation?
Yes.
And when you say that you transport them, when there's a sexual attack, let us say, I would imagine there are some dynamics that maybe some students don't want to go, or they just don't want to have something made out of it because it's somebody that they know. Do you have many issues when you have students who are afraid to even cooperate with you as a police department?
Well, certainly. We normally, when sexual assault occurs, we leave that totally up to the victim as to how they want to conduct the investigation. By giving them that power back, they are more cooperative with us in the investigation. We cannot make a victim come to us if they feel reluctant to do so. A lot of times, victims feel like if their power is taken away from them, they're less likely to cooperate with law enforcement. So we kind of give them that power back and let them decide, how do you want to be treated? Do you want to receive medical treatment at this time? We encourage them to receive medical treatment. And then once we can get them to do the medical treatment, then we allow them to decide, when do you want to come down and talk with us for the interview? That allows them to feel like they're empowered to make their own decisions.
Is it more complicated when the person that's accused of the attack is another student?
No, absolutely not. We have a student code of conduct at Georgia State University, and if a student violates the student code of conduct in any way, it is handled through our Dean of Students office, and then we are allowed to give the victim counseling services through Georgia State University, and it's handled on a different level in terms of the academic level. And then at that point, we're able to deal with it on a law enforcement level as well.
So those things are happening simultaneously then, the administrative process as well as the law enforcement?
Right, we work together, where the Dean of Students is able to put a student in a setting where it's an academic issue. A lot of times we're able to deal with them on a law enforcement level after that, because a lot of times the academic issue for them is the more important issue than the criminal issue. And then determining on what happens, whether the victim wants to press charges or not, the Dean of Students will still have to deal with the academic issue based on the code of conduct violation.
Well, I understand that these are students who are not juveniles.
Right.
But as far as their parents are concerned, is there contact with the parents, or do you encourage the students to contact their parents?
A lot of students who are adults, they're all adults, they feel that if it's up to them to contact the parents. A lot of students unfortunately don't want to contact the parents. I've had situations where parents were totally involved and they were the ones pushing for the investigation, where the student was more or less the child in the situation. But it is totally up to the student whether they want the parents involved or not because of their age.
Well, I would think also that you do have a diversity when it comes to ages within the university as it stands. But with the dorm situation, I would imagine that more of the, let us say, younger age group are staying in the dorms, correct?
I really don't know the majority of the age groups. We do have a dorm, which is our university lofts, which houses adults of all ages. And it's more of a private dorm setting as opposed to a campus dormitory setting.
So it's more of an apartment?
It's more of an apartment setting, yes, correct. So I really don't know whether it's a factor of the age inside the housing community, whether they get their parents involved or not because of that. I just think that the victim is entitled to make decisions on whom they want to contact, or whether it be parents or friends, and more than likely it's more friends than parents in most cases.
Well, something else just came to mind. I think that one of the kind of problematic situations we have is when students are pledging and they commit certain crimes that at the time that they're pledging, I don't think they perceive them as crimes, and that they use that as an excuse. And what we try to do in the solicitor's office when there's a first offender is to give them some kind of pretrial intervention so that they will go through a process of going through classes and doing some community service perhaps and those types of things. And then we'll dismiss those cases once they go through that. But when you have a campus that's spread out the way Georgia State is, I would also imagine that you have students who are on the other side of the law, and you're called and you probably are in a situation where you, like any other police department, you have to make a decision of who was the primary aggressor, who was the one who actually did whatever in that setting. Because I think you're near like supermarkets, you're near shopping.
Yes, it's a very, very open and urban campus. And like you said, even if they're a student and they're on the other side of the law, they're dealt with accordingly, according to the laws of the state of Georgia. But then on top of that, they still have to deal with their academic issue. So like I said, we work together with the Dean of Students office when we have students who are on either side that are dealing with some illegal issues. We have to deal with the laws accordingly because that's what we're sworn to do. But at the same time, they still have to deal with the issue of their education.
Well, and I think that is just unnoticed, what a good job you guys do.
Thank
and
you.
considering that you have so much to contend with in an urban setting than I think you do with a more rural setting where it is more contained because you have people from the outside coming in, people who are targeting victims, I would think.
Yes, we do. We sometimes deal with groups of individuals that come into our campus. However, we have a swift reacting police department. We have several divisions in our police department that deal solely with those type of incidents where people come in to our campus to commit crimes. One of our divisions is called the Crime Suppression Unit. And our Crime Suppression Unit it consists of 4 officers who literally clean up areas where there is a potential hazard for crime. We'll go into the park area and just do a sweep of individuals who are there just to commit crimes, just so that our students can have a safe place to walk through as they're commuting back and forth from building to building.
And I would also wonder about the drug situation that seems to be overwhelming for any metropolitan area, and enticing younger people to engage in those. It's got to be a big challenge for you guys as well.
Our crime suppression team deals with that as well.
And it's probably on an ongoing basis, I would think.
Well, it's ongoing, but you understand that this is not something that is brought on by Georgia State University. This is something that comes from the outside elements, and that's everywhere you go, from the outside element dealing with that. But our crime suppression team deals with all of those issues with the outside interference into our campus.
I bet you are very busy, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to come out and speak with us today. Because as I was telling you earlier, for those of us who went to college 100 years ago, we certainly didn't have the challenges or have a wonderful police department to protect us. And that's very important for people who send their kids to school. They want to know that there is a level of security that's there.
Thank you very much.
So we appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank Investigator Lowman for being here today. I'll be back with some final thoughts about campus security and safety. When parents send their children to college, they want them to be safe. Fortunately, there are officers that are on campus to protect them. We are grateful for the Georgia State University Police for their efforts to keep those students, faculty, and visitors safe while they are on campus. I want to thank Investigator Cheryl Lowman for being here and representing the hardworking officers at the Georgia State Police. Thank you for watching Victims View. We will see you next time.